call it the Cosmic Key. It is the most unique key in the universe.
All right, folks, this is a early Christmas present. We've got Tony Lyons here, and we are about to dive into his magical keyer, his advanced keying template, which is available through his GitHub. And if you guys check out compositingmentor.com, we've had Tony on a ton of times, and judging from the amount of views we get, he's almost like a secondary star of the show, if not primary here. So we've taken some time to shoot some footage, and thankfully, well, I don't know if it's thankfully, but it's not a tough shot, but it's got some challenges, which is good. We don't want easy keys. Of my friend Jack that we shot on a green screen, and I went back and forth for a bit of time, and Tony did obviously all the work in setting up this comp that'll be available for you guys to download. But again, thanks Tony for coming on, and thank you for the efforts in allowing us to do this. I just wanted to bring up the first time I really knew about your key. I was working at what is now what was Filmworkers, is now Carbon VFX, and we had two camps there. We had the LA guys. We had two LA guys that were there as compers. One of which is actually like a senior at Scanline out in San Francisco right now. And then we had the Chicago-based compers. So we had these LA compers that were flown out. We had the Chicago compers. And there were basically two camps. And Daniel Perkinoff, shout out to him, he's at Frame Store Chicago right now. He was showing us, kind of introducing us, kind of came into the rooms like, we're using this keyer. And it was an interesting reality because it was like you kind of got these guys from LA like, what's this keyer? What is this thing? And I still didn't know that it was like a version of your keyer, so to speak. And I said, he says, and in the conversation, Daniel was telling me like, oh yeah, this is from Tony, you know about him. I'm like, oh yeah, he's awesome. He's like, yeah, really cool guy, and it just works so well, this edge blending and so forth. And I remember that being kind of thrown at the LA artists, and they were like, what is this? Like, and they were like, and I remember having my one of the compers, is a great comper, he taught me a ton, Brad, and Brad was like, I can see what it does. It's got a lot of variables. It's got a lot of like, he's like, I got my Zen keyer. He called it the Zen keyer. So he had his keyer of like maybe 4 nodes, and everybody's like, that's it? That's all you use? And it was funny because there was sort of like not a rift, but everybody eventually kind of like jumped on the bandwagon and followed through with this, with your keyer basically. And it wasn't until I kind of like started doing training on it, because I'm like, oh, this is a cool keyer. Then I started realizing, wait a minute, this is in a sense, this is sort of like Tony's keyer, and I'm making alterations to it. And then I kind of threw it out there. I'm like, and until I went back and really looked at your videos, I go, wow, this is a lot more like yours. It wasn't 100%. It was, everyone just took it and built upon it, which is what communities do. But
for sure.
So anyway, let's, if you don't mind, you guys can, we're going to jump in on Tony's end to start to kind of show this. And again, this will be available to download as well through my website and so forth. So
yeah, and thanks for filming this shot and for providing the footage and everything. So I'm sure the one thing about the template is it didn't really have a good accompanying shot to go with to see like it put into action, which I know a lot of people wanted, but I'm not very good at shooting stuff. So thank you for providing the footage and having a good example of like a tough key that you could potentially go and other people can practice on and stuff. So it's kudos to you for filming that.
And kudos to Jack London for being the sad-looking character in this in this scene. He came all the way out to Indiana, and we're like, we're throwing you in front of a green screen. So, all right, so let's switch over. Oh. All right, folks, so here it is. This is the Advanced Keying template. Again, you can get the default template if you go through the Nuke Survival Toolkit, and it's one of the sub-menus, so you can kind of start out with this template. And what we've done is we've taken this footage. I took the plate and the green screen footage, gave it to Tony, let him do his magic, and now he's going to kind of demo that for us.
Right, so you guys can see my screen. Everything's good? Cool. So yeah, this is the footage. I'll just play it back. Hopefully it plays. So got a head movement, and he's going out of frame with some motion blur, some tracking markers that I told you specifically to put in there to make it harder for me. So thank you. And we got this great backplate here from, I think, Indiana, right? Is that right?
You know what? Is your color space not set to ACES?
Oh, it's set to none. Hey, is that better? It's better, right?
Yeah, I think so. I'm assuming you're working under ACES color space and all that fun stuff. If you don't, it gives you that pukey green look.
It was just set to none. My viewer accidentally.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah,
that's better, right? So we've got this footage here of this head movement and out of frame, and a backplate with a little bit of movement. So there's two things right off the bat that I've done. I used a Need video, and I just denoised the footage. So I'm sure, Matt, you could probably provide that either as well, or just provide it instead of the grain plate, because
yeah, we'll have the two. You have two image sequences you provided, and I have the two original image sequences I gave you. So you put this through. And again, if you guys want to learn a little bit about the, taking out the noise via the good old Need video tool, we have some training on that.
Mm-hmm. Highly recommend, denoising your plate before. I mean, you could use Nuke's denoise, but I don't think anybody really uses that too much anymore. So we have this backplate here and the anamorphic output there. And so all I did was kind of adjust the sky a little bit to be more less blown out, and just to put a defocus on it. And I just rendered it out so that things are faster. So in the end, we have this green screen here and this out of focus in the background, and that's what we're going to be working with. Now, a lot of people will recognize the template, and you can see I've done a lot of work in it, but ultimately it's still the same four, maybe 5 key areas, which is the core despill, the edge despill, the core matte, and the edge matte. With the edge matte, I made a clean plate, which I have a little area for in the new template, and of course the edge blending area. And this is the newer template. I think it's probably going to spit out a bunch of errors at me, so I need to update some stuff. But this is the stamps version. Yeah, it's a Nuke 12 thing. So this is the default one. So you can see, there's some changes in this area, but this is the kind of the default one. And I know a lot of people don't like to use stamps. I do like to use stamps, so I am using stamps in this. But there is one without stamps, which is here. So it's just a little cleaner for anybody who doesn't have the plugin or doesn't want to use it. So they're pretty much the same. It's just one with stamps. There's some benefits, I think, to using it. Like I have this output area here, which you can see kind of things going to the additive keyer, and it's just a little bit easier, I think. But anyways, I'll delete that one there. And should we just jump into all the stuff that I was doing here?
Yeah, I just want to note this, just to throw more wrenches into the machine here. This is anamorphic, 1.33 squeeze, as well as we're working under ACES. So just FYI on that one.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't have the color space up here, but it shouldn't matter for this video. I'm sure you guys can see the Rec 709, but the other colors might be different for you. Although I'm sure I could. Well, I don't want to mess with it right now. Let's just go through. I'm going to switch this to. Does this look? No, I can't do that. That's fine. So the first thing I did was I tried to remove the tracking markers, and you could just prep these out any way that you want. I tried to do a little bit more automated way of doing it, and so the first thing I did was just do a prime matte on them, and then invert it, and use the mask. So there you go. There's some stuff. I eroded that and blurred it a little bit to get an overall shape. And I think here I just painted a couple single frames, and then here I'm using my favorite despiller, AP D-spill, which shout out to Adrian Coelho for the awesome D-spill. But here what I did is I D-spilled the tracking markers out of like the red channel out of it. So I actually sampled the color. And so I just tried to make it look like the wall. And then from there, I do a trick all the time where I dilate up and I dilate down, and that kind of removes edges. So if you have like a thin line, yeah, if you have a thin line or something, and you trust me, you'll see a lot more of this in my comp because I do it all the time. But yeah, it basically removes like the dark areas, and then you could do the reverse, which is so instead of the bright areas expanding and going back, it's the dark areas expanding and going back. And if you do both of them, you kind of get like you muddy the image a little bit, and so you kind of remove detail. So I sort of did that to get even further. And then I just used this this mask here, and we have this thing. And for this particular area, it worked almost all the way through, like including some of the, I don't know where he passes over the other tracking marker. Let's see. Let's just go back to this frame maybe. Which frame is it? This one. Yeah, so it works pretty well there. Like for example, we do get some like darker greens, so that kind of screws up a little bit of stuff later on, but I fix it later. But I think this little sharp fix was just in the beginning here when he's over it. I just kind of did a rotor shape here and brought it back. So a couple manual things, but I thought it was easier than just prepping it because it's a little bit automated and probably looks a little bit better. So to try not to destroy any details. So that's like the prep work before the green screen. And in a lot of green screens, you'd want to keep the shadow, but obviously he's not next to a wall in this. So in this case, I used IBK here because it'll keep the shadow will be in the clean plate that you generate, so therefore it won't be in the final key. So there could be a situation if I was trying to keep the shadow that I would just use a single color or like a ramp or a void or a gradient or, like some sort of 4-point gradient or something. So then I would get the shadow information, but in this case, I didn't do that. So I don't know which parts do you want to go through individually, but I could... of course, you can watch the many-part series that I made like 5 years ago about all this stuff to go over each section individually. I'll do a really brief thing. So you have the core D-spill, which is the one that you want to like keep the facial, the color of his face, and you're trying to kind of restore the luminance and not destroy too much detail. But of course, the edges are not going to be what you want. So here, like he's got some green spill there, and I'm trying to keep the skin tones, which I did kind of tweak a little bit there, but it's probably not too big a deal because it might be green spill from another direction. But you can see it's removing some of this stuff here and some like reflection from this button. And generally speaking, it's pretty good. It's keeping the colors as close as you probably could. And I'm using another APD spill there. Just if you want me to go over how to do it real quick, I always do the same. It's going to spill out the errors, but don't worry, it's a Nuke tool thing. I have to fix that. But let's see. I always recommend setting this to custom and picking the screen color. That'll get you really far right away. And then you can basically tweak these things here. And you can see it's changing the color space. So I'm just hitting, I clicked one thing and I'm clicking up and down arrows on my keyboard to go through. And you can see they're generating different colors. So some of them are warmer, some of them are more blue. And then you can also go over to this last menu here, and you can kind of scroll through there. So for example, for the skin tones, I just came across this warmer one. You see this one's a little more neutral, and this one's warmer, so that might be a better one for the skin tones. So generally speaking, I'll go through these two options and I'll find the one that is the closest to the result that I want. So say for the hair, it might be better to show this on the edge D-spill, but because I have a bunch of categories, so like one is for the skin, so you can see this one is matching a little bit better to where it blends with the skin there. This one is for the hair, so that's going to be darker. So I went really dark on that one, but then it ruins the skin area or the the shirt area. And this is that dark edge that's gonna be fun to deal with later. Um, so so then I have a lighter here. I think his beard was a different shade of. So I just made it like a almost the same one. I just duplicated it and eased up a bit on it. This one, and then for example, I have some basic rotor shapes that for his hair. So I'm just blending these together with a key mix. So first you start with this one, and I just have some rotor shapes. And honestly, this is probably one of the things that takes the longest to do, although it's not, because you can be really like soft. Like you can just blur it a lot and do some rough shapes. You can track it on, you can use Mocha or whatever, but you could say I have a lot of keyframes and then just following his movement. But it doesn't take that long, so I think it's worth it, honestly. I think you would spend more time trying to fix the mistake another way. So you can see I'm sort of building the areas where, so here's for his beard, and then I think I do one side of his shirt, and I thought that's these color matches. We're going to deal with this black edge here later, but this sort of matches his color, and it doesn't destroy the shirt that much, so I have a roto shape here that's kind of following him throughout the video. And then I do the other side as well.
Just
So,
a segue question. As far as like a VFX supervisor being on set, I'm sure you have them at Trickster. Is there any like advising on green screens, like don't have your shutter angle at 180, or is that all up to the cinematographer and you have no call on that, because that can greatly affect the key that you're dealing with?
yeah, I think in a production, it depends on what kind of production. If you have control over it, then of course you want to make the screen even, and you want to like limit the amount of tracking markers and stuff. I think actually with this trick, one thing I would say is that with this trick with the tracking markers, if these tracking markers were blue, this would have been a piece of cake, like a walk in the park. It only because it was red on red. So that's something to think about too. Like okay, so he's wearing red, so I shouldn't make the tracking marker red or something. If that's even something that one could do on set on that day. But generally speaking, I think as anybody who's been on set would know that there's so much chaos going on. I mean, half the green screens that I see are horrendous. If I got a green screen like this in production, I would be crying tears of joy because it's so nice. I mean, this half the time there's like a sky halfway, like in the middle of his hair or something, or there's like a set piece that's still back there, or like somebody standing in the background or something. I mean, there's lots of stuff that happens. So I think this is an overall pretty good green screen to practice on, but this is still pretty good and compared to other things that I've seen, like all the time in production. So I don't know. I'd say you probably don't have that much control over it, honestly. But yeah, so I have these areas here that I've sort of just outlined him a little bit, and you can kind of see what I was going for there. It's like the darker parts of him are getting a different type of despill than the shirt and then the facial colors. So of course here I make a despill channel by taking the luminance basically, and that's pumped in there. And let's see, so I went over the core, I went over the despill. This core matte is I just did a prime matte, and I'm just doing this here. I think I was rotoing out some, I don't know what I was rotoing out here. It's not really popping up. Oh, the tracking markers, of course. Removing tracking, it says right there. So yeah, I was removing the tracking markers, and actually I put a stamp here. I know everybody hates stamps, but one of the cool things that you can do with them is you can have a output stamp here, and so I actually use this core matte like in other places. Like I do this. One of my favorite tools actually is this edge from Alpha, which does. I don't know if I can adjust it. You have an inside edge and an inside blur, an outside edge and outside blur, and you can make these cool shapes. So if you have a general shape from the core matte, you can just start using that to, for example, this was an example I think for the hair. So one of the comments that I saw, or that I do see quite often, is talking about how do I've despilled the hair really dark, how like it's gone negative or it's gone really dark and disgusting. How do I get it back? It's actually, in my opinion, pretty easy. Like it's not that bad, or at least it works for me. is if you just blur it, blurring pixels together will take the average. So if you have some lighter pixels and some darker pixels next to each other, like the hair in this instance, it's gonna like average the colors together. So you end up getting an overall brighter value, right? So then if you do a max, so if I unplug this, if I did a max, you can see, if I crank this up all the way, you can see that I've destroyed the image, first of all, but I've also got rid of the problem because the hair is too dark there, for example. If I go back to this frame, so you see here, it got completely destroyed. It went too dark. So if I blur it and then I make a max, that kind of fixes it, but it kind of ruins it. So I think this was set to 0.4. So then I just mix it back, basically, right? So it's like, okay, that looks pretty good there, maybe something like that. And then I have this core alpha here, and I do this edge from alpha, which gives me this just nice, like, it's kind of like edge detect that's just nicer. And then I just plug into the mask. So in the end result, you end up getting something like this, which ends up fixing and looking pretty good, I'd say. Like, yeah, you still got some noise. Maybe you can do some other stuff. But I'd say it looks pretty good. So that's a trick that I use constantly. And you'll see later on I'm going to use that trick for this shirt. I do the same thing, basically. So it's a lot of repetitive steps. I almost do the same type of stuff. I do a lot of erode out, erode in, or blur, min, max, or something like that. I do a multiply, divide. So it's a lot of, like, it's not really math, but it's a lot of just the basic tricks that you're just doing over and over again. And then you're just finding new alphas or new techniques or new mixes or whatever. It's a combination of all these really simple tricks, I'd say. So the point of that was that I'm using this in a couple other places, and the same thing here. And when there was more motion blur on the plate, I animated the size of the edge and stuff to get rid of, so because we get this really dark edge here, but I'll get to that a little bit. So one of the things that I do with the core mat is I use it to erode in and blur it quite a bit inwards with this exponential blur that I have, and I use that to key mix the core despill with the edge despill. So I want to keep the colors of him. You can see here. I want to keep the colors of him in his center, but I want to keep the edge colors where the edge is. So I'm sort of focusing, and you sort of get this soft blending towards the edge. You see there. So it was going to kind of dark and green, and so I'm bringing it back. And so you're limiting what's going to happen just to the edge, and you can control. For example, maybe I can tweak these values here. So if I were to tweak this, I gotta go inward. You can see here I'm controlling like how far that goes in. Make sense? So I'll just leave it the way that it was. The key. And this thing is just, it's really cool because if you go negative with this exponential blur, that so if you go positive, it'll give you like a glow like this. But if you go negative, it sort of inverts it and then glows it inwards. So you kind of get this cool, like, min glow, if you will. So I kind of like that. And you can change, like, plus. You can get it to be looking a little bit different, but I just have it on screen. So you can add more steps to it. So you can kind of get these cool results to get like a soft key, and the multiplier kind of multiplies the exponent. But you can kind of just adjust these settings to kind of get this nice like gradient soft matte towards the edge, and then I do a blur afterwards, or there's a post blur here that you can use to make sure that it doesn't go too far. So you don't want to get something like this where I've blurred it like too far out of it. So you have to kind of, I'll just go back, but you have to tweak it to the point where it remains kind of inside. You don't want it to, you don't want it to go outside. So you see here, I mean, I am doing it a little bit, but you can see it's mostly blurring inwards and not like blurring out at all. So, and finally, maybe the part that everyone's interested in is the key. I think honestly the key is like almost the least interesting part of it, because I'm just using a basic IBK color, right? So Here I just picked a dark color and I picked a light color and I tweaked a little bit until he became dark. And this is really, really important, I think, is that I have these basic roto shapes here, which I have this thing called binary alpha, which just does 1 or 0 depending on is it visible. So instead of having these aliased edges, I don't know why it doesn't like that in the IBK, but I found that it doesn't. It kind of screws it up later if you don't. But so I just put this there, and I used to do the IBK stack technique a lot, and I still do. If you had a vanilla Nuke and you wanted to use it, it's fine. But I started doing with this invention of this exponential blur. I started experimenting with stacking these exponential blurs and doing one of the you set the alpha, you blur it, and then you unpremultiply it. And I just did 3 steps of that. So you see, it's sort of like what the IBK does, but the IBK is also trying to calculate some IBK stuff, so it ends up being a little bit slower. So even though these are exponential blurs with some expressions and stuff, I find that it was a little bit faster and also that it gave me slightly better result. So I just put it in there. It's in the template by default, I think. So anybody can use it. You can delete it and do whatever you want. If you have a clean plate frame or something, you can use that. I did this because I wanted to keep the shadows, because if the shadows are in the clean plate, then they'll be removed from the key. So here you just have a basic IBK gizmo. I always do the same stuff. I turn on luminous match. Sometimes I test auto levels and check all these 3 boxes. So I'll just show you real quick. So I do the same stuff. Check this on, check these ones on. If that does, you can do this, and if that doesn't work, let's see, I'll plug it in, get a result. Switch it to green. So sometimes this will give you a better result. In this case, I think it's better when it's off, which it's not off in this one, but maybe I should have turned it off. There you go. Anyhow, so yeah, just however you want to do it. And I just tweak these red and green points a little bit, just a tiny bit. You don't want to crank them up because it gets really clamped and gets really like bad because
it's crunchy.
Yeah, it gets really crunchy.
It kind of defeats the whole purpose
point
of the IBK, really.
Exactly.
But a little bit goes a long way, just a little nudge.
Mm-hmm. What else do I do here? So I have I removed the tracking markers right away. But I actually did the IBK before I painted the tracking markers out, but it looks like the color correcting the tracking markers to be green ended up taking it out anyway, so it's kind of I did it twice, I guess. But it's no harm done, I guess. And sometimes I just have, there's like a little area here, which I probably didn't do a good enough job on, but I basically just took a color correction and I just tweaked it. I don't know where exactly the problem comes in. Here we go. It's tweaking it here. So you can see here, I don't know if you can see it, but I'm doing a little color correction here. I turned white clamp on so it doesn't go above white, but I just sort of color corrected it very subtly, multiplied it up, and I have a very soft roto there. So I'm just sort of like tweaking parts of the that I think were not being caught. And there's some stuff that I messed up here that could be better, but it might go away with the core despill being added to it later. So here I did a separate one from the one that I did, the core mat that I adjusted for combining the despills. So I did a separate one because it seemed like I needed a tighter one. So I did that here, and now I'm sort of adding it back. So that kind of fills in, as you can see, kind of fills in these holes. And yeah, there's still some parts that, I mean, it could be better. You know, these are the parts that you want to start tweaking later on. So maybe you need a roto shape or do some more roads or some frames you need to animate or something like that. But you can see I'm filling in some of these holes where the key wasn't. Now, I've seen, I saw a discussion the other day that I wanted to try out, but I saw somebody make a pretty good suggestion, which you could take like a prime mat and you could just add the keys together. And I thought that was kind of I've never tried it, but like so you like take this thing and you can like I don't know, maybe it's too harsh already, but you would kind of take this and you'd make one that kind of covers the areas that are bad in the IBK, or you do a key, so like you test different keys and then you sort of like average them together or screen them together or something like that. And so the theory would be like, oh, if one of the keys is bad in one part, maybe you can fix it with a pry mat or something. I thought that was interesting, but I didn't end up doing that. I just ended up grading the mat. But interesting trick. I thought it was a pretty good idea, and I'll probably use it in the future to try to do stuff like that. So then I have this one area here. This is, again, a really basic trick that I once learned, and I just do it all the time now. So to get rid of this dark edge here. So here you can see the D-spill was failing. Now that could be the footage. It could be just like the way that it's blending together or something. But you can see here, I do the same thing. So I'll just break it down into this one area here. So I do a road up, and then a road back down. That kills it. And then I do a blur, so that is a little blur there. So you can see I've kind of got rid of that edge. And then I do a max with the plate. Maybe I didn't need to do that, but I did it. And then I just use a key mix here with the edge out off of there.
You know, what's interesting
sort of
is we haven't even got to your edge blending yet, and you're already, you know, almost like getting ready so that edge blending isn't like overwhelmingly trying to figure the problem out. You're manually doing this. And
yeah, I think when you use this enough, you can foresee the problem, because you understand that each section has its own problem. Like which this is the reason I kind of built the system, is because it makes it easier to troubleshoot. Because if you just plug everything into, there's no problem keying however whatever works for you. But one of the main problems I see is the key doesn't work and you don't know what to do. You're like, where do I go to fix this?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know which part of it's broken. And this is allowing you to like, okay, so if his face colors are too despilled and we've changed the color of his skin, you go to the core despill, because that's supposed to be the part that keeps the skin. Now, if that looks perfect and the core despill is not changing the parts of the skin, then maybe the core mat that you've used was too much, and you need to adjust that because you're not key mixing it with the despill, the edge despill enough. Or maybe your alpha is broken, or maybe your core mats needs a little bit of work. So you're sort of finding the areas. Here you can see that I'm just looking at both of the D-spills combined, and when I've combined both of the D-spills, you can see this horrible dark edge, which will cause problems later. And I'm sure that I didn't do this first. I'm sure I did it later. I was like, oh, let me fix that problem, but I'm just kind of stepping through. But this is something, I see this quite a bit, and it's kind of amazing how I think it's pretty simple to fix, actually. But I see it giving people a lot of nightmares of like it happens basically when it's like a sensor issue of the camera, where either you have like a chromatic aberration problem, or you have a exposure problem where the green screen is too bright compared to the subject, or vice versa, where the subject is too bright and the green screen's too dark or something. And you get these like weird, like you despilled too much, and you get these really weird dark edges. But I think as long as you've despilled so the color on either side, because I did the despill, is the same. So it ends up being really easy fix, because I just kind of blur it and max it. So
yeah, those dilate maxes really do a nice job.
These dilates are great. I do it like all the time. Like you can ask the people I work with. Like I do it to get like the overall color. Like watch this. It's really cool actually. So you can dilate this guy off of this green screen, right? So you can just kind of do this. Maybe I went too big there. Yeah, I went way too big. So and now it's gonna fail probably on me. Let's see. So it looks like first I need to go this way to get rid of anything that's too bright, I think. So first I go this way, and I do this so much that I set something up, but it's at work, so I can't do it. I just duplicate and go back. So right, so we've gotten rid of his skin tones, and now if we actually just duplicate this one, and now we crank this one up. So what you're doing is you're eroding the brightest pixels. So therefore, you can get rid of him from the shot basically. And I'll just go lower until he comes back. Here you go. I didn't even need to go that high. So you can see here. There he's gone, and then I duplicate this one and then put another negative. So now I've gone in reverse. And so you kind of like, I mean, maybe this is a foolish example, but you've kind of like gone back and forth and you've removed him in some way. So maybe this could be a clean plate.
In a way, it's almost like the same. It's almost like showing you what the IBK color does, and since creating the backplate, it's kind of using that sort of dilation in tandem with a green screen in a way, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit different. I mean, it's kind of like faking generating like a fake, and obviously I'm getting some issues here with these tracking markers. So maybe if I plugged it into this, it would work. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it takes a while. Like this is a 4K plate, so it takes my poor computer, even though I got a new one, is struggling. Oh, the bounding box is also huge, so it's a good chance to show off the VBox, the format, which I use quite a lot. Anyways, it's just an interesting example of like I do this kind of stuff all the time. I've done this with say you have a moving shot, and you have like a light that's flickering, like a light that's gone, maybe some sort of lens flare, but you want to remove it. So you kind of want to you take one still frame, and if you smart vector the still frame, moving with the shot, you can actually do this dilate trick, and you can kind of molt. So if I were to do this, I know I'm kind of getting off topic, but I do love this this trick here. So here I've kind of gone like I've turned everything white, so that allows me to say like adjust this, and maybe I can turn it to a different type of green or something. And then if I multiply this thing, it's kind of a multiply divide trick. I don't know if this is helpful at all, but anyhow, off topic. But it works better when like if this green screen was flickering or something. It works as a kind of a cool way to get an overall color of the screen that you're using to kind of stabilize the color change, if that makes any sense. But I digress. I'll go back. Now, here is where you put your color corrections. I think I did an example here. I just have some bluer colors. I'll turn them off for now. I just made them look a little bit better with the background, I think. Here's an example of transforms that I'll turn on later. And of course, this is the part where everyone gets maybe confused and wants more explanation. But this is here I'm grabbing the background, and I have a stamp going here. And so what you want to do is, well, let's take a look at what's happening. So I grabbed my despill mask, which I had put in up here in my edge despill process. So I grabbed that, and then I am changing the saturation a little bit. I think there was a question about this, but I think it just helps to desaturate the edge a little bit, because you're going to be mixing it with the colors of the background, and so you don't want to contaminate the background too much with the colors that you've changed, because it's supposed to look like the background anyways. It's kind of optional. I find that it helps sometimes, so I just left it in there as like a 0.5 thing. So I'm using the edge despill to kind of desaturate a little bit in preparation for the fact that I'm going to be plussing back some other colors. So you see here it would be too red. So this thing looks a little bit better. And what am I doing here? So I'm using a multiply. So I'm basically telling you where should I look at the background? Where should the background be brought back? Well, it should be brought back wherever you can see the despill, which is the difference between the despill and the original plate. And so you're multiplying it right there. And so you can see I'm doing a little bit of, I didn't do too much actually, but I just tweaked the blacks a little bit there to be a little darker, and you can see it more if I use this plus here. You can see right there, you see I don't want to go too crazy, so I just went like maybe right around there. I think I went even less, actually.
And again, at this point, you've already done a lot of the work on the edge work.
Yeah.
You know, so You don't want to like totally rely on the edge blending area at the bottom. You want to have at least be halfway there by the time you get down there, right?
It's like a complement to everything else that you're doing it. So everything else is kind of, let's go to a sharper frame so you can see. Somebody, I believe, asked me to use an example of Black's Match, which was in the setup, which I can try to explain it pretty well, I think. The concept, well, the Black's Match is used to say nothing should be below this color, right? So if you're using your D-spill map, right? So this is defining your edge, right? So if you're using this this kind of alpha, you could say that nothing should be below the background where the edges are, and that can kind of help you get rid of. First of all, it's going to bring up the values to look just like your plate. So you see here it was a little bit too dark, and now it's bringing up. Now maybe it's too strong, which is why I think I mixed it back, because I don't want to crunch anything. So I don't want to go too bright. So I brought it back. But it can also, this is also a step that will help you with these darks, the dark hair, because I may have made the hair too dark. But if I tell it to never be darker than the background, then where he goes over the parts of the image that are too dark here. Let's see the background. Yeah, so if he goes, that looks a little bit different. No, it's just my imagination. Yeah, but anyways, it'll. I think I did a color correction on the background. I forgot I did it. Anyhow, so you don't want your subject to have a darker black value than the background that you're putting him over. So in this case, you kind of you're tricking it by saying like, hey, don't be any value that's below the background, and use the edge despill as a, so you're not ruining anything that's important, basically. So it's kind of a trick, I guess. And then you do your pre-mult. So all that work, and now you can see all these edges. But since you're utilizing the background as the define, like where to define what gets brighter and what gets this. I mean, this looks terrible by itself, but it's because it hasn't gone over the background yet. And I do a little light wrap, optional. I just think sometimes it looks better. And I'm going to turn off this additive key right now and just go back to it in a second. But then we just over it. And so this is what it looks like just without anything. And here I have a little step that you can see. And you can see that I'm kind of losing some of the hair details and some other things. So it's not a perfect key there. And it could be because the sky's too bright and the edges are too gray. So it's like the sky is overriding it's like shining through the hair a little bit. So you might look at the alpha and you're like, hey, I see hair there. And then you go back and you're like, hey, I don't see it anymore. And it might be that you need to use this additive keyer technique. And I know some people were asking about this, but basically you have your clean plate, which I'm grabbing because I generated it up here and I plugged it into clean plate right there. And I pull it out later. And then I have the original plate as well. So this is what the clean plate looks like. This is what the original plate. And you can see, I mean, you can kind of get the idea of what it's about to do, but it's about to take the difference between the two. So that's what's going on internally. So if we just take a look, so you get this kind of luminance difference. And what it's really doing is it's taking the difference between the clean plate and the green screen plate, and it's using that matte to multiply down to 0. So if you increase this, you can see it's going to go. But these values are not negative; they're 0. So you don't have to worry about negative values in this particular tool. That is a problem that you see in other tools, which is sort of one of the reasons I made this one. But you can see there is the option to despill the edges or whatever. But it wasn't necessary for this, I think. So I just left it in there. And so you can see here, this already almost looks like a comp by itself because it's just like the difference. It's like a shadow of him. And so when you put that behind the over, you end up only affecting the semi-transparent areas. So I'm going to set this back to default. I don't know what the values were before. There we go. something like that. So if you see here, you see I'm getting that extra bit. That's the really hard part to get to. And that's because I've created, underneath the over, I've created like a shadow of him, which is just the difference between the original plate. And that's why it works so well, is because you can see every single little difference. And this works really well when you have a really good clean plate. So if you know what you're looking for in your clean plate, then you're going to get a good result. If you don't have a perfect clean plate, then you're going to get the differences between your imperfect clean plate and your key. So that if you had like Roto Shapes or something, or like if you took the tracking marker and you could still see it, then you would also still see it here. So it might also, there's a mask option, so it might be good to like, mask, oh, I only need to see his hair, like I only want to get it where his hair is. So then you would, make a soft shape, and you could only bring, of course it breaks. Maybe I'll fix that later. I don't know what happened. Oh, I didn't close it. There you go. So I thought it was me. It's not. Okay. So yeah, so maybe you want to isolate it here. And again, it would be because like maybe there was some like nasty like shape or something on the green screen, and that would show up here because it's like it's showing you all the imperfections, which is the difference between the clean plate and the green screen, which sort of makes sense. Which is why you can see the hair, because the hair is so minutely detailed that only when you do like the show me exactly the difference between the two, but then you see all the different, you see all the dirt, so you really need to make sure you're doing this only in areas where you need to. So I recommend using a mask if you want. In this case, he had a dark shirt, so I just put it there. I didn't do much to the lights, but this also kind of works for the light values. Maybe I can, yeah, you can see there. So this is what I mean. If I crank this up a lot, you can see that you can actually see the rotor shape that I used way back here to make the clean plate. You can see, I think it's this one. So because from this point inwards, I have a different green color. All the imperfections from the green screen, which is right here. You see all these little we can make it like really crazy. All these. Let's see if I can pick a channel that doesn't look like crap. But you see all these little imperfections. This is what it's showing us. All of these little imperfections that obviously they go away once I do this. So we don't get that. So it's a difficult thing sometimes. You need a pretty good clean plate. Or I mean, what I do a lot of times is that I just pick a general area that I need, and I'll make like a solid color. I can make it constant. So I can make like a constant color here. Sample. Right, so let me pick this color, and then maybe I'll use, instead of a crappy clean plate, maybe I'll use one color here. And you can see, okay, well, the whole area looks different. Also, I gotta turn off this light on. So this one doesn't look perfect. It's not getting me the values where I need them, but it is getting me wherever I sampled that color. So maybe it'll work on his chin, because it probably won't be that much different, right? So then maybe I would roto different constant colors and use a couple of these additive keyers, or I'd make like one, so you can make another constant, and you could sample a different part, and you do a rotor shape and do like a key. So I did like this thing, and you do like a key mix, and then you can use one additive keyer. Oops, I messed that up. Okay, so then you'd have something like this, and maybe you have a ramp or something. I don't know. You can get creative with it, but basically, you're doing something like this, and you'd have like a gradient for your clean plate, and you can see I'm getting different results here. If that makes any sense. Yeah, you can see it's kind of moving around. So this works perfectly fine. You don't need a perfect clean plate. You can just use solid colors if it works for your particular green screen, or you can make a separate IBK if you didn't use an IBK to key. And maybe you can make one here, and that'll work for your clean plate or something. So, yeah, you get the idea there. That's why I spend all this time on this clean plate for the exact reason that I know that it's going to be used later for an additive keyer if I need it. And usually you do need it for like hair or something like that. So that is pretty much it. This is the final comp. I do a DAS grain here just to get back some of the grain from the original. And somebody asked me I think there was a question about how do you restore the greens or how do you deal with the greens in the grain. Most of the grain from the area where it's green screened is going to be replaced by new grain that has a response curve for your background. So you don't need to worry about it too much. However, if you do want to despill the grain, I would not despill the grain, but rather I would do something like this. I would take the despill mask, and I'm just gonna drag it over here. So I would take the despill mask, and let's see, I have the denoise. So if I wanted to keep the original grain on the character, which I did not do here, I should have done it, but I did not do it. So here's the grain, and you can see that it's green. Let me do it to this area here. So the grain is green, so I would take the despill mask, and I would just take a grade node, make sure to turn black clamp off because we're going to keep those negative values, and I would just do this. So plug it in the mask, and then I would just multiply this down. So you don't want to go to 0, but you can see like, okay, maybe it's starting to look like the rest of it. And this is, honestly, this is good enough. You can see here, you're not getting, like in this edge, it might, disturb you, so you could go really far down. And you can just see it visually, like, oh, okay, this grain looks like despilled now. And what you're doing is you're shrinking the values. So by despilling it, you're making it all the same color. That's not really what you want to do. You want to take the green channel, which is too pronounced, and you want to just like shrink it down a little bit. So that's what it's doing. And it's shrinking it down in both negative and positive because you're multiplying it down. So it's like shrinking how much influence the green channel has. And then you'd use this to bring the original grain back on top. So you can get all the details. So maybe you plus this. I gotta go back to normal. All right. I don't know if you can see the grain. I can see if I can crank it up a little bit, but so this will bring back a lot of the detail from the original plate, which I did not do, by the way, in the comp. So maybe I can make an update for this. But regardless, you need new grain for all the green screen areas because it needs to apply the grain so it applies more grain where it's darker and less grain where it's brighter, generally speaking. So it wouldn't know how to do that from your green screen because it's really even. It's like really even grain. So therefore you need new grain that matches your old grain so that it knows like how to apply it to the background and stuff. So but this would be good for keeping it. So in fact, I mean, you could use the alpha channel if you want to do this. And it's getting a little messy, but you could use the alpha channel to key mix both of the grains. So I want to keep the original grain that I just made. So I'll just put this over here. So here I have the original grain plus on top, and I just kind of key mix this with the alpha. It's kind of dirty. I mean, we can do a better setup for it, but yeah, you kind of get the idea. So now I'm keeping original grain where he is, and then everything outside of him using his alpha channel is getting the new grain. So a little bit of a dirty way. There's probably a better way to do this using of course, you can use the mask of the desk grain, but I won't get into it right now. But yeah, that would be the theory behind that one. So that's pretty much it. We'll take a look at the final comp. So let me just play it. I have a pre-render here. Let's let it cache up. So you can see here, I probably spent, if anybody wants to know how long this took me, I probably spent like one working day, so maybe like 8 hours over the course of a couple weeks. I just did it here and there. So this whole results, like including the background and all the edge tweaks and stuff, it took about like a whole working day, basically. So that would be the time frame. Of course, I know it the best because I made it, so obviously, maybe you get faster as you do it more or something, but I would say the key looks pretty good. We can go back and forth between the two. So I have the original here. You can see I'm keeping a lot of detail, like these minute lines there. And you go to the beginning.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah, and you go back and forth. You can do it white. And this is, somebody was asking like what quality would you expect on something? I mean, I would expect this quality, but that's just me. And that's also like Marvel would also want this type of quality here. Like and it's possible to get all these hair details back. So there's no reason why you shouldn't. Maybe here, like I went a little bit too dark, so you'd go back and maybe tweak that area. It looks like it almost a different color or something. But regardless, you still see all the hair detail. Like, and I'll zoom in really close. I'll zoom in really close on this area so you can see all that detail, the chin and the hair and stuff. So there you go. You can see all the hair, and it's not chattering or anything. It seems like it's fine. That's a problem sometimes with chattering, but like you can see, there's a lot of the blending going on. It looks pretty natural, I would say.
What's causing the chatter? Is like just hard keys, basically, or
the hard despill. The despill, yeah, it reveals like grain that maybe wasn't taken up. But this doesn't seem like it's chattering that much, honestly. Seems okay. He's also moving a lot, but chatter would be because you don't have a very good degrain. Your despill's like really intense, so it's like really crushing values and making things that you wouldn't normally see like apparent. And so, yeah, or the key's chattering, but the key would be chattering because like subpixel stuff and yeah. Oh, one example. Some people don't really know this, but they kind of ignore this transform area. And the reason why you do the transforms here, this is really important in my opinion, is because, so right here I just have like a camera shake, but I kept it in place, so really it's just adding like motion blur. So I'm gonna turn this on. If I can click. Yeah. So I'm gonna turn this on, and maybe it'll take a while, but I'll toggle this back and forth. And the reason this works so well, if you put a transform where it is here, instead of transforming the green screen ahead of time, because if you motion blur, taking its sweet time, but if you were putting this guy on like a card system, and he was like having camera shake or motion blur or something like that, you would want to do that step here. Not after the edge blending and not up at the top. If you do it up at the top, you'll bleed the colors together and you'll get a worse result because the greens of the green screen is going to be blending into your guy. So you'd want to motion blur after. But you can't motion blur after you've done the edge background blend because then you'd be double transforming your background because you'd be moving your background with him. So it's really important to do the step right before this despill blending and take it. It's taking its real sweet time. And take advantage of the fact that, let's see if I can reduce the quality maybe. Take advantage of the fact that it is transforming all of the channels that you have here, that we have. So your despill mask will have the same transformation as the RGB colors, which have the same transformation as your alpha channel. So like it's transforming all of them together so that and also if you, this might be a good example. My Nuke crashed. Of course. We'll take a short break because my Nuke is gonna die.
Did you get a new computer?
I did. So I'm running the M1 Mac actually, but it's still like 4K plate, and I'm doing quite a lot. So I think it's not the best. I'm really testing it out now, but there's no way I would have been able to do this on my other computer. So I'm at least
I was
going to
ask you because you're used to dealing with Alexa footage. That's Blackmagic footage. Did you find that to be a little bit more troublesome as far as the dynamic range or the nothing, or compared to how you usually work?
No, I don't think so. I think it's all kind of the same. And maybe you were right about the color. Maybe I should have done this whole comp in a different color space or whatever. I just took the footage in and started working immediately. So yeah, I'm trying to clear the cache, but
that's fine.
Computer's a little. I could restart the Nuke anytime.
Well, I think you covered everything, right? Should we just go into questions then? Or was there anything else you wanted to jump into? Or?
No, but I need to, let's take a pause, and I'm going to just close my Nuke and kill it.
Sure.
So before my Nuke horribly crashed, I was showing, I just did this kind of motion blur setup. So there's a lot of cases where you don't know exactly what's going to happen with the green screen. Your green screen might be a guy on a card that's in Harry Potter world that's like in the background somewhere with a lot of motion blur. If you're doing like The Hobbit or something, like your green screen could be doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And instead of trying to like reverse engineer the transformations and stuff, the benefit of this is that if I look at the D-spill mask, my D-spill mask is receiving the same treatment of the transformations as my RGB, which is really the key, because no matter what transform you do, oh, it's really hating me. No matter what transform you do, there we go, it's going to have all the correct motion. So all the filtering is all the same too, and everything's the same. So if, you know, if you took this and moved it over, like, you can trust that it's all in the right spot. So that's sort of why I have the transformations here, because there's really no other way, no other place to put it. So because, I mean, I could just run the example. I don't know if it's gonna break.
You've done this demo before on your other videos, I think, where you kind of explain why the transform has to occur after as opposed to before.
I think maybe it's a difficult thing. I'm just gonna. This is also a critical part. So say we were delivering in 2K, I wouldn't reformat before the key. I would reformat in this section right here. So I've just downscaled it. And when I've downscaled it, it's because now I'm getting a filter on something that's already despilled, and I'm getting the same filter with all these things. And so let's see. Well, I can't really do it. I was going to say let's see what happens if I try to do it up above, but all my Roto Shapes would be all messed up. But you get a different result. You get less hair detail. You get less, because in a 4K plate you can see the hair, but then if you scale it down, then the hair gets blended and then you don't get the hair. But if you get it before and you scale down the alpha, maybe I can show it up here, right? So at this step it might be good, right? So if I do this, you can see I'm getting a worse result. Maybe I need to do it to both sections here. It's not that bad actually, but but a lot of times you get a lot of. It depends on how much you're scaling it down, I suppose, as well. So if you went even further, like if this was going to HD format or something, and it was like 1:5 scale. So yeah, you want to make sure that it's. I don't know how to describe it.
Are you guys still working in? Are you still working in 2K for all these big Marvel movies and all this now? Is it still 2K? Huh? They haven't.
It depends on what you're working on, but a lot of Netflix shows are 4K, but some Marvel movies are still 2K, I think. So.
All right. So like I was telling Tony earlier, folks, call yourself compositors. If you are a compositor, you will take the time to download this. It's free. Can't beat that. Tony's toolkit is free. It's a free example. Once you load it up, we have a nice little reference thing so you don't have to re-plug in files. It's just boom, wherever you put it, the comp should line up. He's done the neat video stuff, obviously, but going back and maybe getting familiar with Tony's original videos on this, this is more of an updated version of his template, obviously. But again, if you don't, do a little, Sherlock Holmes in and look at this comp and take the time to turn things off and turn things on, then you're not a compositor, in my opinion, because that's how you learn. You poke around. When I was working at a post house, I'm like, let me get into them comps and see what in the world you folks are doing, So yeah, we didn't cover everything today, obviously, and we maybe brushed over some stuff, but you can find it out yourself. And that's the pioneer spirit of being a compositor, But the questions we have here is Najordi, I always get this wrong, Najordi Jovanovic. I'd love to see some hands-on match black gizmo use. If I remember correctly, it's part of this template.
Yep, showed that. Here you go. Don't let the blacks of your edges go below the blacks of your background that you're putting behind, because it'll look strange. So. It's a use case there. And
you also have a video on black matches by itself for color correction.
Yes, please look at the it's a really important video. Please look at the black match tutorial that I made, or it's like a demo and why you should be matching your blacks and how it can help you with your comps and stuff. So.
Whether you're an online teacher or an on-the-ground teacher, the most common phrase you'll hear is, "Did you watch the video?" So, let's see here. Jacob Cardios, can you tell us a bit more about Additive Keyer Pro, how you use it, and some tips and tricks to deal with hair detail? Obviously, I think we went over that.
Yeah, I think we covered it. It's not the craziest node in the world. It's basically just a difference, and you're just multiplying or adding negative values, I guess, or multiplying it down to zero where the difference is between the clean plate and the green screen, which is why you get all those little details. And like I said in the video, maybe it's best to just treat certain areas differently and only get it with the hair and play with that. But you can use other Additive Keyer Pros if they work better, or sorry, other Additive Keyers if they work better. But Additive Keyer Pro is the one that I made and the one that I tend to use. So, yeah.
Manoj Manoharan, Madlux VFX, which is your favorite way of additive keying? Is there any gizmos that you use almost every time?
Yeah. I used to use a different additive keyer, but I specifically, I didn't like that a lot of additive keyers, they plus negatives, which if you go too high on the darks, so sometimes you really want it to be dark, but then other areas are darker than others, and then you end up getting negative pixels, which I didn't quite like. So the pretty much biggest difference between mine and others is that instead of adding negatives, it just takes the difference, makes it into an alpha, and uses that as a mask in a multiply, and multiplies to zero. So it looks pretty similar, but where one would be negative, it becomes zero, which I found was a little bit better for the comps that I was using. That and that I have a built-in despiller in there, which is using a key light. But basically, if you do an additive key, you run the risk of maybe you want to keep some of the colors, but if you still have the green screen, then you'd want to despill the green screen. But you don't want to go through the trouble of despilling all the stuff that you did up at the top. So what you could do in this case is just do like a simple despill, which I just put like because you're really looking for only luminance values, and then to kind of just get rid of the green color or the blue color. So I have if you just change the screen color at the top of my gizmo, it helps to just despill, so you can bring back a little bit more color. So if you want if a golden hair or something like that, then you'll bring that back, or if you're a red jacket, then it'll come back in that. So that's what the difference is between mine and others.
Mr. Miyagi, how do you deal with situations where green screens of different shades are stacked together to cover the whole background, which create hard seams in alpha, and sometimes green screens don't cover the whole character? We have to roto the portion out outside the GS, but then we get artifacts in the edges when placed on the BG background, like the old background shows through the edges cause of roto, since we went over that, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Those are really tricky. Yeah, I know what he means with the green screen, and then you get like a sky above it or something. You're just going to need to make two separate keys or two separate scenarios, or combine two different keys right where the edges, basically. Use a lot of rotos, use a lot of blending, and then where that is, I mean, and I had one shot once, I think it was I was at Method Studios, and I was doing one shot that was 1,000 frames long. And it's actually, you can go look up the trailer for it, because it's a trailer shot for the King's, oh man, I always forget the Outlaw King with Chris Pine.
Yeah, I think you talked about that on the show last time. You mentioned, yeah, we showed that clip.
He's sitting in a boat, and I just had to paint back his hair for like 1,000 frames, like 800 frames or something. So like, sometimes you just gotta do that, man. You just gotta do what you gotta do on those edges where it doesn't quite line up. So sometimes you gotta put in the work, but make sure you bid for those shots correctly.
And then the especially when you got to do 4K fun. I was telling Tony, I finished my first Netflix show, which should be out soon. I got 2 Netflix shows I'm working on right now. One I'm really excited about, but I'm not excited about 4K. And I tell you, folks, whew doggy, you got to really get in there. It's just like, man. But anyway, we got Mario. Here we go. I'm sorry, Mario. Cazares. That's right. You've been keying shots for a while, so I want to know if you still find yourself learning new techniques and tricks, even now with all your experience.
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. I think all the time. I'm learning. I mean, I don't do that many green screens anymore, to be honest. I do other things, you know, so sometimes there'll be shows without any green screens that you're really on, or sometimes you're not assigned to them. So, like, I'm a little bit rusty, to be honest. This was a good refresher. So I don't do them that often, to be
Who
honest,
gets
which is
those?
kind of
Who
funny.
gets that? Like the juniors, or you guys like? What do you? Who?
Just different,
Random
you know,
people.
just some shows don't. Yeah, I tend to be doing a lot of CG heavy stuff nowadays, which is like just a different level because, um, you know, some people are. It's not that I'm bad at green screens. It's just, you know, I'm good at other things too. So they put me on some other stuff. But I would say, do I learn stuff all the time? I mean, I remade the template with the stamps. I thought it was a better way to work, a little bit, for me at least. The clean plate section that I mentioned, which I found, oh, this works better if I do the exponential ed unpremult. It's a little bit better and a little faster. The erode trick, I think I only started doing the erode in and erode out trick like a year ago or 2 years ago or something. I really just love it now. I'm just like, oh, I just do it all the
I
time.
can't wait to try these techniques you told me, because everything you're talking about, like what's with that edge? I get that edge, you know, and you just
Yeah.
you paint yourself into a corner and you sit there, you stare at the screen, you go, what do I do? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
and that whole dilate max thing really looks cool. So
Simple things. Erode, blur, min, max. That's it. That's it.
it's life secrets. It's the secret to life. No?
It'll get you far in the comp world.
Reed. Oh wait, no, who's this guy? Sopele does so. What kind of name is that? It's just a bunch of garble letters, I guess. What is the correct workflow for removing the green on grain? Thanks for this interview.
I tried to cover that for you there, and maybe we can I can give you an updated script or something, Matt, where I'm bringing back the original grain of the guy so that our friend there can see like how you would maybe go about that. It's a great question. It's something that's overlooked a lot because if you despill a face, maybe you lose detail and you want to bring back the original grain, but then the original grain has green in it. So what do you do? So that's it's a good question. So it's a tough one.
We might. Pardon me. I'm probably going to speed up these questions a little bit because I got another engagement I got to get to. But Reed says, will the interview be live so we can ask questions in real time? I was thinking in the future we could do like a real... I've never done a stream on my channel. I find them to be irritating most of the time.
Might be fun if it's just a discussion. I think if we have to show... And we could have like a Nuke open in the background for an example or something. But yeah,
except
it's
watch what they're going to ask you though. Hey, throw this together, will you? It's like a cooking show with like... Daniel Eckstein, are there any tricks to help keys that have dark, badly green screens and brights and actors elements? Say the screen, it casts a shadow onto itself. Always found these are the hardest keys to pull.
Mm-hmm. I think we covered a lot of that. I think.
Yeah, we did.
It's a lot of the edge things and trying to keep the shadow in the IBK and getting better clean plate if you can, stuff like that.
Esteban Ignacio, any tips for keying in ACES?
Yeah, I don't. Maybe you're better at answering that one.
No,
I don't really find it.
No, not me.
I don't find it any of it like it's all just. I mean, look, you're dealing with red, green, blue pixels that are some sort of variations. I mean, it's all kind of same math at the end of the day. I mean, sometimes keying in a different color space. I think I covered that in one of my keying videos. Like keying in a different color space gives you a different result. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's not. So, yeah, whatever works better for the alphas and Z-spills.
Samuel Carbonneau Beaufard? Now that's a name. First of all, thanks guys for doing what you do. You are lifesavers for people wanting to learn. So I have two questions. I got a lot. When talking about edge despill, you say that we want to use a color that makes sense for the subject. Brown for brown here, for yellow for blonde here, and just some neutral gray. Then later you teach us how to introduce background plate values in the edge blending. My question is, should we do both? I feel like they cancel each other out, and when you get to the background blending is better. You even put a saturation node for the background values because canceling out the edge despill. And also, how would you personally handle tracking markers on green screens, especially when you can be behind subjects hair? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I tried to cover both of those in this topic. It's kind of a good question. You either want to make the edge look like the edge that is, like, so the red jacket, right? We have two options. We could make the D-spill red like the jacket was, which will help look like an extension of the jacket itself. Or alternatively, if we knew what our background, let's say he was going over a blue sky, then we could just despill towards a color that's blue, because either one of those is acceptable. Now, if you don't know what your background is going to be, it's probably safer to do the edge part, because no matter what the background looks like. So if he's supposed to be over a blue sky, but later on he's, oh, never mind, put him over a red brick wall, then you're kind of screwed. So it's, I mean, it depends on the shot. Or he's over a black, dark, lit alley or something. So yeah, it depends on the shot. I would say I tried to explain the edge despill part. It might influence your colors if you have two colorful despills and then it's mixing with your background plate. But I mean, ultimately, the edges should look like they're blending with the background. So the desaturation was just I found it. Okay, let's bring the edge colors using the edge matte a little bit less saturated, so that when it's multiplied and combined with the background, that it doesn't change the background colors so much. But ultimately, it gets pre-multed, and then you really wouldn't notice that much. I mean, you can always play around with the value or delete the saturation node, or tweak your despills and stuff. But yeah, I think it's you're aiming for those two scenarios, either looking like your background or looking like your edge that it's surrounding.
And the last question, Halo. Is it necessary to get every little hair detail visible in the original plate in your key? Because I'm having trouble getting faint, transparent hairs right in the gradient in the green screen. It's even harder to get clean alpha. I don't know if I'm doing anything wrong. I'm following many tutorials, but can't seem to get clean alpha of the hair. There's always broken or flickering strands in my alpha.
It could be your denoise, the denoising the plate. Maybe if it's flickering and stuff, could be that. So maybe you need a better denoise plate. Do you need every single hair detail? If you're working for Marvel, you pretty much do, yeah, or Netflix or anything, because they're so used to seeing good keys and stuff now that if you give them some garbage key, now if it's like a first look comp and like the first time they're gonna forgive it, I'm sure, so you can work on it later. But for like a final tech check phase, I would say yes. And I want everybody to take note with this script. There's not a single edge extender in the script. Everyone's always using edge extender. Personally, I find it the most taboo thing. Now, I could have edge extended that shirt. I chose not to. I could have done that. That would have been a good example of like, okay, let's bring it in for this one little area. But try to avoid just slapping an edge extender just on everything and like ruining, because it ruins the whole thing, I think, in my opinion. So if you ever think like, oh, this is impossible to do without an edge detect or an edge blend or edge. Sorry,
well, you basically solved the riddle in today's demonstration through that whole dilate min-max workflow. Because that's what people do. They go to that edge. They go, I can't get this stupid thing. I'm going over that edge blending, and that's it. And then then they got smear edge man.
It's not even a bad. It's not even a bad technique. And like our friend that was saying, oh, the green screen only covers part of it, and then I need to roto the rest. That's a great example for an edge extender. That's a perfectly fine example. Because a roto, you're never going to get the edges flipped, right? So you can edge extend that. I mean, but it should be used as like the last resort. In this case, I didn't really need it, so I didn't use it. But maybe there would be another case where I did need it. But you want to limit it to the places where you do need it. So I see way too often just like, oh, well, the edge is too bright, and then boom, edge extend, and then if you see it too much, it's like you just notice it. Like you just have to look at the comp, like, oh, somebody edge extended this. You can just kind of see it in the final comps. So I would say that for sure would not pass a check, unless it was a solid color being extended. Of course, but if you have like a plaid shirt and you try to edge extend that, it's gonna look pretty horrible. I think there's some leeway. There's some room to wiggle with. If you do one of those edge extenders that kind of warps a little bit, that's usually a little bit more acceptable, because roughly looks like the plate. You're not losing all the detail and smearing it all over the place. But yeah, I would say try to avoid it.
Well, there you go, folks. 15 plus years experience of keying in 1 hour. So we'd like to just, again, thank you, Tony, for coming on. You've been a great inspiration to a lot of compositors. And I'm sure everyone's going to be grateful for ability to download all this. And I sadly have to run. I'll tell you where I'm going. I'm going bowling with a bunch of 20-year-olds.
Nice.
Anyway,
Well, thanks for having me on, and it was great. It was
yeah,
good
we'll
time.
have you on again, dude. We'll definitely have you on again. So thanks a bunch. Much appreciated.